This is the one you've all been waiting for, I think. I'm going to be sharing my top tips on how I got 890 out of 900 in the quantitative reasoning section of the UCAT. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, Raina on the Cusp. My name is Raina and today we are continuing with my UCAT series. I've done a video already on my top 10 tips for the UCAT exam as a whole, so please do check that out on my channel. And I've also recently uploaded a video all about the new on-screen UCAT scratchpad feature for the exams this year. In this video, I will be sharing my top tips for the quantitative reasoning section and how I got 890 out of 900. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel because I have lots more UCAT videos coming soon. And if this is the first time you've clicked onto my videos, thank you so much. My name is Raina, I'm a third year dental student at the University of Sheffield. I make videos about dentistry, what it's like to be a dental student, and I give tips and advice on how to get into dental school. So let's get into the video. What is the QR section of the UCAT? It's a subsection of the UCAT that tests your ability to solve fairly straightforward maths problems in a pretty short amount of time. There are 36 questions to answer in 24 minutes, which roughly works out around 40 seconds per question, which isn't a lot of time at all, like with all the other sections of the UCAT. My first tip is to recognise the common topics that come up again and again in the QR section. This is a really good place to start with this section because although it's not a particularly difficult section, in my opinion, it's all about the strategy and playing the game of quantitative reasoning really well. And as part of that strategy, you need to prepare for what kinds of questions come up commonly, and those are the sorts of questions that you can secure the most marks on. So when you learn to recognise these common types of questions, you can decide which questions are you maybe naturally good at, which questions can you scan the relevant info for very quickly. And of course, you need to do lots of these questions that do come up regularly and feature again and again and again. So what types of questions am I talking about that do come up quite frequently in the QR section? These are things like your averages, your median, mode, mean, range, speed, distance, time formulas, ratios, any graphs or table questions, currency conversions, velocity graphs. And the ones I dreaded the most were the tax questions. Was not a fan of these, just didn't seem to get my head around them quite as well as the other questions. Here is an example of quite an easy question that does come up, and it involves a velocity time graph. Here we've got a common question that shows a graph showing the velocity of two cars at different times. The question is, how much greater is the acceleration of car A than the acceleration of car B? And actually in this question, they have been nice enough to give you the formula for acceleration, which is change in velocity divided by change in time. So this is definitely a simple question that you need to learn to be able to recognise. To work this out, first you need to work out the acceleration of car A. So the change in velocity for car A is 16 and the change in time is 4 seconds. So the acceleration for car A is 16 divided by 4, which gives you 4 meters per second squared. And then to work out the acceleration for car B, well, the change in velocity is 0. As you can see, it's a straight line on the graph. And the change in time is also 4. So to work out the acceleration for car B, you do 0 divided by 4, which gives you 0 meters per second squared. Therefore, the difference in acceleration between car A and car B is 4 meters per second squared. So therefore, the answer is A. My second tip is to learn all the basic formulas. You've probably heard this one so many times by so many different people, but it really is true. This section is actually not that hard, but knowing these basic formulas, which are at GCSE level, will really help you save time and tackle those questions. If it's been a while since you've done GCSE maths or you don't do any maths now at all, it's a really good idea to refresh your mind and learn these basic formulas. A place that I'd recommend starting with would be at BBC Bitesize. This is a really good, easy to access, easy to use website that can show you a range of basic formulas that will really help you with doing these questions. I will also put up on screen some of the basic formulas that I found that I think would be very useful for this section for you. You need to know how to convert between units, how to convert between fractions and decimals and percentages. These are all time-saving steps as well. So here we have a lovely pie chart about what finger people use to type the spacebar on the keyboard of a computer. So the question is, among all the respondents, only 40% of those who said left thumb and 50% of those who said alternating thumb were self-taught typists. How many respondents were self-taught typists? So we need to look at how many people said left thumb, that is 65, and how many people said alternating thumb, which is 52. Then you need to be able to work out 40% of 65 and 50% of 52. So to work out 40% of 65, an easier way to do this would be to convert this percentage to a decimal in your head, which is 0.4. And then you can type 0.4 times 65 into your calculator, which is 26. And then 50% of alternating thumb, now obviously this is just a half, so half of 52 is also 26. Therefore, you just need to add 26 and 26 together to get 52, and the answer here therefore is D. This question should really take you no more than about 15 seconds, I would say. But you can see how it is really helpful to be able to convert that percentage to a decimal and cut down on the number of steps that you put into your calculator and remember those basic formulas. My third tip again is quite a common one, but extremely important, and it's to be able to read the question first and then scan the text for the relevant information and figures that you need. So this is a question where I would literally skip to what the question is asking me straight away, which is how many of the people who voted in April did not vote in September. This is because this looks like quite a complicated table. There's a lot of information being thrown at me, and I feel like it would be quite a waste of time if I went in to read all of this. So if we first look at how people voted in September and look at the did not vote column, as this is the one we are interested in, we can also see that if we look across to how people voted in April, for Party A, 189 also did not vote in September. For Party B, 156 also did not vote in September. And for Party C, 68 also did not vote in September. So these are the three figures that we're interested in, and this is a simple addition calculation of those three numbers, which gives you 413, so the answer here is A. My tip number 4 is to be able to learn to recognise the complex calculations that come up in this section and to be able to take an estimated guess at them, flag them and move on. This is a very difficult skill because it's really hard to know which questions are easier and which questions are hard sometimes. You might start a question thinking that you can do it, and then further down the line you realise that actually it needs like 3 or 4 different calculations, which definitely makes it a complex question. So when you're flagging complex questions, these are questions that are wordy, for example, that you're not so comfortable with, or that need lots of calculations or steps involved. However, make sure you pick an answer every single time. Do not leave an answer blank, because there is still a chance you can get a question right if you have put an answer. However, if you leave it blank, then you have definitely lost that mark. And if you're aiming for a high score, around 800 plus, aim to flag around 6 or 7 questions. I think on the day I honestly got quite lucky with the difficulty of questions that I got, and I don't think I flagged that many at all, maybe 2 or 3 questions. But like I said towards the beginning, some questions that I did really struggle with and would really struggle with now still are tax questions. I don't know what it is about them, they just seem complicated to me to solve in a short amount of time, so when I see them I would probably still flag them to this day. So here we are, a classic tax income bracket question. This is exactly the type of question that I'm personally slightly more uncomfortable with, still to this day. I would take an estimated guess at this, flag the question, and I would move on. Obviously, everyone is very variable in what types of questions that you're not so good at, so the more question types you look at and the more questions you do, you'll become more familiar with what you are good at and what you're not so good at. I'm actually not going to go through this question because I don't think I can bear to, so I'll leave it up on the screen for a few seconds and then I'll also put the correct response. Tip number 5 is to get comfortable with the on-screen calculator. A really good way of doing this is to be able to practice on a full-sized keyboard and with a mouse. On a full-size keyboard, you will find the numbers at the right-hand side of the keyboard, and do make sure you use these because it's much faster than clicking the numbers in with your mouse. On the day, you will not have access to your own calculator, so you do need to know how to use this on-screen calculator. Know how to use its functions, how to save numbers, how to use the memory functions in particular. I would be happy to make a video all about the calculator and explain a bit more about its functions, like I did a dedicated video to the scratchpad as well. Tip number 6 is to practice under a time constraint. This tip does go for all of the sections of the UCAT, but especially in the quantitative reasoning section. This is because this section is all about doing mental maths and doing it quickly and efficiently and getting it right. And like I've said, although this section does not involve difficult maths, it's hard to keep up the accuracy when you're under time conditions and you're feeling the pressure. So make sure when you're practicing at home, whether you're practicing online or in a book, make sure it's under a timer. This is especially important if you do practice from the 1250 UCAT book, as obviously that doesn't come with a built-in timer. You'll find that as you practice under timed conditions, you'll get so much faster at this section and you'll be able to maintain your accuracy as well. Tip number 7 is being able to use the quickest calculation or the quickest step to get to the answer in order to save time. So what I mean by this is that if your mental maths is strong, you can convert a lot of numbers in your head, you can do lots of multiplications, divisions, and you can actually restrict your use of a calculator, which inevitably does waste time. For example, if you need to work out a fraction of something, it's really handy to be able to convert that fraction into a decimal and turn it into a one-step calculation. This avoids having to divide by the denominator and multiply by the numerator, and you can do it in one step. Tip number 8 is all about speeding up your mental maths or your mental arithmetic. It would be really handy to practice any quick-fire questions. You can search any quick quizzes online that do sort of really quick, snappy questions that you can practice some of those calculations through. This actually reduces your reliance on the calculator and the notepad, as you can do more of the calculations in your head, which ultimately will save time. So here is an example of an easy question that you need to be able to get right under a timed pressured situation. It says, in the second year at the university, Linda scored 99 points in P5. What is the difference between her P5 score in the second year and her average project score in the first year? So a classic average or mean question. This is where being really comfortable with your on-screen calculator as well comes in so handy, so you can quickly type in 98 plus 92 plus 97 plus 89 and divide them all by 4 to get a score of 94 as the average in first year. And it's told you that in P5, Linda scored 99 points. So all you need to do is 99 minus 94 in your head, which is a difference of 5 points. Therefore, the correct answer here is D. Tip number 9 is to estimate if you're running out of time on a question. So you've been looking at a question for a while and you just can't seem to figure it out. It might involve some big numbers, some complicated figures. So if the answers are all far apart enough in value, what I would recommend is actually rounding your calculations and picking from the closest answer. Sometimes, of course, this isn't possible, as you will have questions where the answers are all 0.001 something close to one another. And in these sorts of cases, you may still be able to eliminate 1 or 2 answers that are just completely wrong. It's all about increasing your chances of getting a question right and learning the tactics in order to do that. Tip number 10 is to make sure you can keep track of any previous answers or figures that you might need. Often in the QR section, there is a stem of a question, and then you'll get maybe 4 or 5 questions that are related to that stem. And sometimes I have personally found that I've required certain numbers or certain figures and answers from a previous question in order to work out the next one. This might even be an important figure in one of the steps of the calculation that can save you a lot of time if you've already got it written down. In order to do this, you can make sure you use the whiteboard and pen that's given to you. Or for this year, if you're sitting the exam in 2020, there is an on-screen scratchpad feature which you can also bring up in this section. The memory function of the calculator is also very handy in storing previous numbers, and you can use it to sort of work out the next step of your calculation. I also found it really helpful to have a visual representation of my calculations to sort of figure out if I've gone wrong somewhere. So this section, like all the other sections in the UCAT, is about practice, being strategic, and keeping calm under pressure. Make sure to 100% know your maths formulas, learn to recognise the types of questions that come up, and try not to heavily rely on your calculator or your whiteboard. Whilst I was practicing, I made sure to use all of these tips that I've spoken about in this video, and I really believe that's what's contributed to me getting such a high score. So keep calm, keep practicing, and just remember that on the day, you also have that added benefit of some adrenaline, and that can help you think a little bit clearer as well. So thank you so much for watching. I hope my tips have helped you with the quantitative reasoning section of the UCAT. I will also leave the links to any other UCAT videos I've made in the description box down below, so please do check that out. If you did like this video and it helped you in any way, please make sure to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you all again in the next video. Bye!